Hi there everybody, and welcome to lesson number 4 in our series of lessons about using Google Sheets. Now in this lesson, the only thing I really want to do is to show you how to do a nested if statement. Now if you don't know what a nested if statement is, hang around and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Now you remember in one of our previous lessons when we started setting up our budget template, we said that the currencies could be one of 3 values. They could be South African rands, US dollars, or euros. And at that point, we set up an if statement to do a calculation if the currency was US dollars, or another calculation if it wasn't US dollars. But we never did anything to cater for the event of, well, what happens if the currency is in fact euros? What do we do then? Let me show you how we handle that situation with a nested if statement. And all that a nested if statement is it's one if statement inside another if statement. The one if statement is nested in the other if statement, the same as Russian dolls are nested in each other. The small doll is inside the slightly bigger doll, is inside the slightly bigger doll. And the thing with nested if statements is you could nest many, hundreds if you liked, if statements within one another to create some really complicated logic statements. But before we get any further, let me show you exactly how to do that. First thing I want to do is just set up some data so that we can check that our calculations are correct. So I'm going to set up a resource here for a designer, which is a per hour resource maybe, whom we're going to pay in euros, and we're going to pay them 15 euros an hour, and we're going to make a 15% markup profit on them. So currently you can see that the formula that we're using to calculate the base cost in South African rands takes care of if C12, there's C12, is US dollars. Now because C12 is not US dollars, this statement simply assumes that it's rands, but clearly it's not, it's euros. So we need to add to this if statement to take care of the euro case. Now before I go any further, let me just take you through one last time the structure of an if statement. Remember that an if statement is constructed as follows. You've got your logical expression followed by what to do if that expression is true, followed by what to do if that expression is false. And in this case, all that we're evaluating is C12 US dollars? If it is, multiply the base rate by the exchange rate, which is this value over here, and if it's not, simply take that F12 as the base rate. But for us, we want to do a check to see if the currency is euros as well. And for that, we're going to need a nested if statement. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start another if statement. So it's equal to if, open the round brackets, and it's exactly the same logical progression. What are we testing for? Well, we're testing to see if this cell is equal to euro, comma, what do we do if it is true? Well, if it is true, we want to take the base rate and multiply it by the euro exchange rate, which is this cell. So can you see now that we're using B5 as opposed to B4? B4 is the US dollar exchange rate, whereas B5 is the euro exchange rate. Let's continue. After we put a comma, it's then going to see, well, what must I do if that statement is false? Well, if that statement is false, I wanted to then work with this if statement. So all that I need to do in that case is open up some more round brackets, which will then contain this next if statement. So far I hope you can see what we're doing. Our original if test was to check if the currency was US dollars. So we had that as our first statement. Then, before that, we created another if statement. And the logical progression of that was test if the currency is euros. If it is euros, do this calculation. If it's not euros, do this calculation. And that calculation is where our original if statement is now going to be executed. Now, when you do nested if statements, one of the most difficult things to get right is sometimes not the logic. It's kind of to know where to put the brackets, especially where to put the closing round brackets. Let's work through that together. So in this case, we've opened a bracket here for our first if statement, the one that's checking if the currency is euros. Then we've opened up another bracket to contain the second if statement. Now the second if statement has its own pair of open and close brackets. So in this case, we must make sure that we have a matching closing bracket for this open bracket over here. So I'm going to put a closing round bracket at the end, and that should correctly calculate what it is that we are after. If I were to change this to US dollars, we should see that it changes. We can see that it's changed correctly because it's simply multiplied 1725 by 10. If we change this back to euros, we can see that that has indeed changed, and what that calculation is 1725 multiplied not by 10 now, but by 15, because the first if statement is true. It is euros. Let's just make one last check. If it's South African rands, correct. This is simply 1725. Let's go through that one last time. First if statement checks if the currency is euro. If the currency is euro, do that calculation. If the currency is not euro, do this calculation over here. This calculation itself checks, is the currency US dollars? If it is, do this calculation over there. If it's not, simply take the value from F12. Now the last thing we need to do is autofill this all the way down. But remember what happened last time we autofilled. Remember, whenever we autofill, every row that we autofill down is automatically changed. So what was B5 becomes B6, B7, etc. And we want the row to stay as 5. So in this case, we need to make sure that we lock that row. We don't want that row to change as we autofill it down. Now I'm able to autofill this formula down. And I can also autofill this formula up to take care of the other two that we hadn't yet done. So this is a euro cost. 15 euros per hour is equivalent, with the markup, with the profit margin of 15%, of 258 Rand and 75 cents per hour. Now, I hope that was clear for you. If it wasn't, great thing about video is that you can watch me explain it all over again. If you are still stuck, then what I suggest you do is you send a question to our help desk, which you can find on our website or on our Facebook page. Until next lesson, lesson 5, all the best. Bye-bye for now.